Good evening, and welcome to Veterans Hall at the historic City Hall building. My name is Mark Lombardo, and I'm the Supervisor of Parks and Golf Courses for the City of Waterbury. It is truly an honor to open up tonight's Hank O'Donnell Hall of Fame inductee ceremony and be surrounded by such talented and well-respected individuals. We have a great night ahead of us, and there's a great crowd in the room here. To get started, I would like to introduce tonight's Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Bob Brown.
I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. It's really an honor for these two gentlemen to have so many people here to honor them tonight. This Hall of Fame has been since, I would say, 1982, and Joe can correct me. Joe Gary is one of the original members. Has been going on since 1982, and if you look at the program, I'm sure on the back, if you look at the program, you're going to recognize many of the names who were involved in sports in Waterbury and made a name for Waterbury. Tonight, we're honoring two people who have really left an impression on Waterbury and continue to this day to make an impression on the youth in the city of Waterbury. I just mentioned to Joe Gary that this is the largest crowd that we've had for the Hall of Fame inductees since we've been since we started this, and it's a tribute to the two gentlemen who are here. Without going into much more detail at this time, I would first like to introduce to you Mayor Neil O'Leary, who you all know. And let me tell you something, this Hall of Fame hasn't operated since 1992 or 93. We had the oversight board came into Waterbury, as the residents here know, and money got very, very thin, and we don't try to raise any money. The city had been giving us the money. These plaques are plaques that you're going to see tonight. They're made from the same people who make the plaques in the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. So they're very, very nice plaques. But Neil, for a couple of years now, he's been on me to see if we could get something started again. And Joe Begnell, who's the, what are you, the president of the park board now, Joe? Joe is the president of the park board. He had a conversation with me, and Neil finally this spring said to me, look, we've got to do this again. And I said to Neil, well, that's nice, but where are we going to get the funds to do this? And he said, don't worry about it. That's Neil's favorite thing, too. Don't worry about it. We'll find it somewhere. And he's done a wonderful job, and he really looks out for the good of the city and the good of the youth and the sports programs in this city of Waterbury. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you Mayor Neil O'Leary.
Thank you. Thanks, Bobby. I'd first like to thank all the members of the Hank O'Donnell Hall of Fame committees who've put together so much work over the years, and also acknowledge those that are on the back of the program that are no longer with us, that gave so much of their time and effort to not only the city of Waterbury, but certainly the youth of Waterbury and the baseball programs. So look at this room. I can't believe it. We thought we had more than enough chairs, and we don't have enough chairs, and that's why I feel so good about seeing you here. We are honored with our two heroes tonight who are going to receive the honor of the plaques. Of course, Mr. Commissioner Fay Vincent is here, and I had the pleasure of meeting Fay several times this year. Took him on a couple of tours of the city and the PAL buildings, and the excitement that he exhibited, and just the pure delight in his eyes. And then we had lunch several times together, and with Frank Montero and Joe Gugliotti and some other great folks, Bob Burns, and to hear him talk about Waterbury then and now, it was really kind of rewarding and nice to hear from such a distinguished person. And then there's Norm, one of our greatest of all time, an educator in the city. I don't think there's anyone in the city that doesn't know Norm, and his great family is here with us today, and we're so proud to have you all here. And, as Bobby mentions, one of the things that Waterbury has lacked, and for a bunch of different reasons, certainly God knows probably financial is one of the biggest. We have gotten away from a lot of good traditions that we've celebrated over the years. And as I look around the room, I see Tony Santoro, who single-handedly with Ray Brown brought back the Mickey Mantle World Series after all these years. And this summer we had huge crowds and 16 teams from all over the country and Canada. And it was a great baseball event like the old days, like we all remember. The stadium has been refurbished. It was a nice crowd. We had Joe Palladino from the Republican American covering every game, every day. And it really brought back a lot of great memories, and it was great to see everybody there. This is just another example of recognizing culture and tradition in the great city of Waterbury. And I can't tell you how proud I am to see all of you here today. It's brightened my day. These have been kind of rough days going back and forth to Hartford. I would ask all of you to become state legislators, and we could get the budget done tonight, unanimously and bipartisan. But at the end of the day, I love it here, and I love having all of you here. So many familiar faces, and God bless all of you for being here tonight to honor these two great men. Thank you.
The next speaker, who's going to make a few remarks about the history of the Hall of Fame and how it got started. It's hard for me to admit that I was this guy's teacher, and now he's the mayor's right-hand man. The mayor's got two right-hand men, George D'Agostino and my student, Joe Gary. And there's a few of my students in here that Hank Layden is sitting in the back of the room. He was a former student of mine. And there's a lot of teachers here that I see, Wally Bowen, Jack Varinelli, Louis Pozella. There's a lot of teachers who are here because Norm had a lasting impact on their lives and in what they did. But at this point in time, I would like to introduce to you Joe Gary, who is the Chief of Operations for the City of Waterbury. He's been on the Hall of Fame since its inception. Maybe he missed the first couple of years, but he's been here for all the time. And he's a very, very positive person who has made a big impact in the city. So, Joe Gary, for a few remarks.
Thank you, Bob. I hate to do this right off the bat, but if you're the commissioner and Bruce Fremming, if you're keeping score from home, just two corrections. First of all, it was 1984, and the only reason I have to correct it, Bob, it's in my remarks. And we did go dormant around 2003, 2004, but I didn't want to say something, Bob. If Ace Gazzardi was here, the late great Ace Gazzardi, he would say, if you can't verify it, make it up. But unfortunately, we can verify it. Thank you, Bob. Mayor O'Leary, elected officials, dignitaries, tonight's inductees, Commissioner Fay Vincent and Norm Feidelson, my fellow members of the Hall of Fame Committee and friends and guests. I would first like to acknowledge and thank Mayor Neil O'Leary for the large part that he played, what Bob just told us about, in the revitalization of the Hank O'Donnell Hall of Fame. Certainly without the mayor's help, it would not be possible. Mayor, thank you. It was only fitting that the first inductee to the Hank O'Donnell Hall of Fame was Hank O'Donnell himself back on August 17th, 1984 at Municipal Stadium. The committee's task was to elect individuals who have made a significant contribution to sports. Clearly, the two individuals we have here before us tonight fit that bill perfectly. Hank O'Donnell was a Waterbury legend, starting his career in 1923 when he joined the staff at the American, serving as the right-hand man to the legendary sports editor of the New York Mirror, Dan Parker, also a member of the Hank O'Donnell Hall of Fame. Hank was one of the founders of the Connecticut Sports Writers Alliance and served in every office. In 1963, Hank O'Donnell was named the Connecticut Sports Writer of the Year, certainly one of the highlights of Hank's career. In 1938, a lot of us here from Waterbury and some of our visitors from Naugatuck will appreciate this. In 1938, it was Hank O'Donnell who tipped off the then New York Yankees general manager, George Weiss, about Weiss was an old friend of, He was an old friend of Hank's from their Eastern League days. He tipped him off about Frank Spec Shea, otherwise known as the Naugatuck Nugget, right down the road. And as all of us here from Waterbury Naugatuck know, Spec went on to a great pitching career with the New York Yankees. He was an outstanding pitcher for the Yankees, winning 2 World Series games in the 1947 World Series, along with the All-Star game that same year. So again, on behalf of Mayor O'Leary, myself, the entire city of Waterbury, I'm honored and privileged to be here tonight to induct our 19th and 20th inductees into the Hall of Fame, Commissioner Fay Vincent and Norm Feidelson. Congratulations, gentlemen. Enjoy the evening. Thank you.
I'd like to take a moment to explain to you a little bit about how the Hall of Fame Committee works. Joe just mentioned Spec Shea, and I've had many people ask me, why isn't Spec Shea in the Hall of Fame? The reason Spec isn't in the Hall of Fame, we only have 2 qualifications to be in the Hall of Fame. You must be a native of the city of Waterbury. You must have been born in the city of Waterbury. That's the first qualification. And the second qualification is, if you weren't born here, you had to have made a significant contribution to the athletic activities that have occurred here in the city of Waterbury. And that has been the way we do things. People have written letters to the editor, people have complained, why isn't this one in, why isn't that one in? The process is very simple. We have a group of people, and I'd like to introduce to you the group of people that are here tonight that are on our committee. First of all, you've already met Mark Lombardo, who is the supervisor of parks and golf courses in the city. Joe Begnell, who is, and all the guys are sitting up here, and the ladies are sitting up here. I don't see Kathy Awad, but Kathy's in the back here. Joe Begnell is the president of the park board. Myself, I'm the secretary. Joe Gary is the director of operations. Sam Leisering is the retired director of parks in Waterbury, and many of you know Sam. PJ Conway is a retired sports editor, or sports writer for the Waterbury American. And just so that you're aware of it, PJ is having some medical issues. He tried very hard to be here tonight, but it just wasn't possible for him to be here. But he sends his best to everyone, and we should all remember PJ in our prayers. He is fighting a tough battle, and knowing him, he's going to get through this, but it is a tough fight for him. Kathy Awad is on our board. She's at the Northwest Regional Workforce here in Waterbury. Tony Santoro, the director of the Mickey Mantle League in Waterbury. Pudgy Maya, who's a retired policeman, who's been playing baseball, I think, since I don't know when, but he's been playing baseball for a long time, and he's still a tremendous help to the committee and to everyone who he associates himself with. Joe McGraw is the Director of Economic Development in the City of Waterbury. He's not able to come tonight. Pete Morrissey is a former coach at Sacred Heart High School, former teacher, and well-known golfer in the City of Waterbury, and has been very helpful to us. And Tony Picocci, who is a retired superintendent of parks, who is also a member of the committee. We have 12 people, and we meet usually in the summertime. We put a notice in the newspaper that we are accepting nominations to the Hank O'Donnell Hall of Fame Committee. And all we request is that you send a letter or a note to Mark Lombardo at the Park Department indicating you want to nominate someone. We ask that you give a little bit of a write-up, and then we close off the nominations after probably about 6 weeks. So we give plenty of time. We usually put two or three notices in the newspaper, and now with computers, we're on Facebook and we're on Twitter, so that people should be able to see. We have not had, this year we had 8 nominees, and they were 8 solid nominees. We only usually select one person. But because we have been not doing anything for a good number of years, we decided this year that we would select 2. I can tell you that the 3 finalists were the 2 people went to my left and went to my right. Faye Vincent, Norm Feidelson, and the third one, because I hear this all the time, the third person with the most votes was Jimmy Pearsall. Now, Jimmy Pearsall, people tell me he should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't disagree, but you have to get the votes of the committee members. Jimmy Pearsall was third. Next year, he will be an automatic carryover. Nobody has to nominate him. Jimmy is in next year. But we will, again, ask for nominations, and if we have 8 or 10, we will take the 2 highest vote getters and put them in with Pearsall, so it'll be 3 people. We then vote on a point system, 5 for first, 3 for second, 1 for third, something to that effect. And the person with the highest number of votes from the 12 members of the committee is who we induct. So it's a fair process. People all the time are neglected. There are some great people. There's people here in this audience that belong in the Hall of Fame. But you have to have made a major contribution. Speaking of, in the audience, I see Ronnie DiOrio, who is in the Hall of Fame. Ronnie, just stand for a second. I know you. You all recognize the names: Dave Wallace, Terry Tata, Larry Mullen, for the old-timers from the City Amateur League, Joni Joyce, Charlie Donato, Johnny McKenna, Paul Razor Doran. Again, you had to be around. I used to hear my father talk about him, but Razor Doran was big in the City Amateur League. Paul Barone was an umpire. Jim Spahn, Big Jim, had the Waterbury Laurels. He was always providing opportunities for kids to play baseball. Johnny DeVito, City Amateur League guy. Johnny Moore, former major leaguer with the Philadelphia Phillies and the Chicago Cubs. Johnny Reardon, who was a swimming and baseball coach. George Candy LaChance. Candy LaChance is in the 1800s. He was from Waterville, my area of town where I grew up, and he was a great major leaguer. It's my understanding that he had the home run record. I think he had 17 home runs one year, and that record stood until a guy named Babe Ruth in 1927 hit 60. And so Candy is somebody, though, that we all remember. Dan Parker was a sports editor. First he was with the Republican American, and then he went to New York and became a big-time sports writer at the Daily Mirror, as Joe pointed out. And Billy Schofield was a coach at Crosby High School, was very instrumental in kids getting involved. In fact, he was Norm's coach. Norm always tells me that he made Schofield famous. I have to wonder about that sometimes, but anyway, he probably did. So that's a little bit of the background here with this Hall of Fame. We're very happy to have it going again, and I now want to introduce to you a special guest. When it was decided that Faye and Norm would be inducted into the Hall of Fame, I called Terry Tata, who, as you all know, is a Waterbury native, who's in our Hall of Fame, Major League Baseball umpire, and I said, Terry, would it be possible that we're inducting Faye Vincent into the Hall of Fame? Could you be here for the induction? And Terry said to me, Bobby, he said, I'm up in Boston right now. He said, I had open heart surgery in July, and he said, I'm recuperating, and it's about a 12-week recuperation. So we at the time, we said, and Terry said, that'll be like October 1st. I should be okay, and I should be able to come back. So I said, great. Well, I'd say 2 weeks ago, he called me and he said, Bobby, I can't make it. He said, I'm too weak, and I'm gonna be good, but I can't make it right now. So I said, geez, Terry, that's too bad. And I'm sure Faye will understand. I wish you a lot of luck. And we're thinking about you, and we know you're going to be back before you know it. In the meantime, though, I said, I got to get somebody to take your place. And I said, I'm thinking about calling the Major League Baseball offices. And he said, oh, no, you don't have to do that. He said, I got a guy who's, Terry said, when I told this guy I was coming back to Waterbury to induct Faye, he said, this guy said to me, oh, I'm coming too. He said, and he has a ways to come. He said, I'm coming too, and I want to surprise Faye. I don't want him to know I'm coming. So he said, call Bruce Fremming, who's a former Major League umpire. He said, call Bruce and ask Bruce if he'll come. So Terry said to me, you know what, I'll call him, and then I'll let him call you. Well, the very next day, Bruce called me, and he said he would be delighted to come. He said he was going to come anyway. He wasn't going to tell anybody, but he was going to come. And he said, I'll be glad to substitute for Terry. He said, there's only one thing, he said, I don't want you to tell Faye. Now, as it turns out, Terry told me that Faye and Bruce are very close friends. They speak to each other. And so we talked about it. Bruce said he would be here. And sure enough, tonight we had to keep him segregated for a while. He was here early at 5 o'clock. Faye got here at 6. So we're walking in, and Bruce says, stay in front of me so he can't see me. And anyway, when we got here, Faye was it made me feel good to see the reception. Faye said, what are you doing here? And Bruce said, I'm here for you. And so it worked out real well, and we were very happy about it. Just real quick, Bruce Fremming was originally an umpire in the National League. When I think it was a labor agreement between the umpires where they used to be American League ump and National League umps, but I don't know what year it was, but they all got together, and there's just one umpires association. So Bruce went from umpiring in just the National League. He umpired all the games. He has the longest tenure of an umpire in Major League Baseball. He retired in 2007. He has been working with Major League Baseball in New York as a coordinator or someone who evaluates umpires or looks after the umpires. So he's still very active in baseball. And so what I'd like to do, I'd like to take and ask Bruce to come up. He's going to speak for a few minutes, and he'll tell you some of his stories from Major League Baseball and tell you some of the associations he's had with Faye and Terry. And we're very happy to have him here, so let's give him a nice hand for coming.
Well, that everybody can relax. Can you hear me all right? I got bad ears, so I can't get the feedback here. The count of three, a nice boo. 1, 2, 3. Boo. It's not like they did it at Wrigley Field, but that's all right. It's great to be here, and obviously I talked a lot about umpires and everything, and a couple different people today asked me, how are your eyes and everything? I'm wearing the reading glasses. But I'll tell you how good my eyes are, and most umpires are in the same thing. The sun is 93 million miles away, and on a clear day I can see the sun, so that should tell you something about it. And this summer, I was in New York City. I had to go to the office, and umpires got to be quick. Not as quick now as we had to be, because we used to have to argue on every missed play and everything. Now they stand and joke with the coach and look at the instant replay. So, but in New York, this night that I was in New York, I ran across one of the city street ladies. And she propositioned me to the fact that she said, for $300, she'd do anything. And I said, paint my house. I want to take you because this was one of Faye's favorite stories, and it actually happened. My first year in the big leagues was 1971, and I joined the crew of Al Barlick, Eddie Vargo, and Harry Wendelstead. And our first assignment was in New York. And when we got to New York, Barlick said, in the hotel, at the Sheraton Hotel, hey, and I didn't know he's pulling my leg or what he's doing. He said, I need you to go out early and watch batting practice and see if you see any birds flying around. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, Nate Colbert of San Diego last year hit a bird in flight, and the league wants to know if it's a problem, we have to make a ground rule on him. So what happened was Hodges comes out. He's with the Mets, and Pete Rose of Cincinnati comes out. And while we're going over the ground rules, I said, we're going to have to make a ruling, Pete. We saw there's birds flying in fair territory, possible problem with the birds. Pete said, you know, and then Hodges said he remembered the story about Colbert hitting a bird. So what happened was, I said, luckily I studied birds. No, and Barlick now nudges Hodges, so Hodges is in on the deal. I said, there's two birds flying in right field that bother me. One's a male and one's a female. And Pete Rose, you know, good ball player, but not a Rhodes Scholar by any means. He says, well, what's up? I said, if it hits the male bird in fair territory, it's a ground rule, 2 bases. Pete, without flinching, said, what if it hits the female? I said, it's all you can get.
And it really happened.
Norm Feidelson, he's got many honors, and I looked at his bio today, and you know that he was in World War II and the Rhine River, and I'm trying to think of the Patton. Before battle, a day before battle, going across the water, they had a pep talker from George Patton. I had a friend that lived in Vero Beach, right across the pool from me, that also was involved with Patton. To meet 2 guys in your life that were involved with Patton, to me, he's a hero just being there. But to be with George Patton, I mean, that's terrific. And his unit was sent to liberate the conservation camps in Czechoslovakia. And here in this area, and this is why he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, he was a coach, a teacher, a principal in the Waterbury system. Later, he served 14 years as executive director of Waterbury's Retired Citizens Old Age Home, where I'm heading. And but he's had a terrific life and a terrific career. And Norm has 3 daughters. He was married to Gloria Feidelstein for 42 years before she passed. And I just think it's a terrific thing that they would reach out and honor you as a basketball guy also. He was an official in basketball. He told me he paid Terry Tata $1 a game to work on a Saturday morning. I got $3, but Tata wasn't as good of an official as I was. Before I get to Fay, I want to pay tribute to Terry Tata, who got me here. And, you know, Terry's a smart guy, and he was a great umpire, and he had your back on the field. And I worked with Terry 7 or 8 years. I can't tell you how much fun we had together working. And I just think, you know, he's a class guy. Our wives knew each other. We hung out in spring training in Vero Beach and did dinner almost every night in Vero Beach. And he's a real friend and an umpire's umpire. And you should be proud of a guy like him from this area because he was at the top of his game. And when you talk about Hall of Fame, he could be in the Hall of Fame real easy as far as I'm concerned, not only here but in Cooperstown. He was that good of an umpire. But everybody makes a mistake, and Terry did too. While we were partners, I told him about my pheasant hunting in Cascade, Wisconsin. And Terry, how many people here know Terry? He's not an outdoorsman by any means. Doesn't play golf, he doesn't hunt, but anyway, I talked him into hunting, and I got him a hunting hat. He looked like Elmer Fudd. And I got him a gun, and we drove out to Cascade. It's about 50 miles from where I live. And he fell asleep on the way to the hunt. So when I get to the farm, I get out of the car, Tata's still sleeping, and I go up to the farm, and I said, Norm, we're here to, hey, a lot of birds, you're gonna get a lot of shooting. I said, I brought this fellow from Connecticut with me. He said, I hope you have a great time. He said, I need you to do me a favor. I've got an animal in the barn, an old goat, and I can't put it down. He said, I'd like you to shoot the goat. And I thought, well, I don't want to shoot the goat, but anyway, he said, hey, you've been coming here all these years. I need a favor. All right. So I agree to shoot the goat. I go back to the car, I knock on the window, wake Terry up, and I said, Terry, you won't believe it. This guy's not going to let us hunt here this year. He said, I came all the way from Waterbury, and I'm with you for the weekend for 3 days, and now we can't hunt? I said, no. I said, but we're going to get even. We're going to shoot one of his animals. And Terry says, you got to be kidding. Nope. So I drive down to the barn where he told me where the goat was. I go in the barn, and I see the goat. Terry's still in the car. I plug the goat. The goat's dead. I come back outside, and before I get outside the barn, I hear 2 more shots. I said, Terry, what the hell's going on? He said, hey, I got 2 of his cows, too. Fay Vincent and myself have been friends since 1989. I met Fay at Cooperstown. I was there for an induction of Al Barlick in 1989. And of course, his connection was with our commissioner, Bart Giamatti. And I played golf on a Saturday, and Fay came along with the guys and was like a cheerleader and asked me, you know, what we were doing on Saturday night. I said, we got about 12 or 14 people. We're going to go to dinner. And he said, well, I'd like you all to be my guests. So we went to dinner. We had a terrific time. And why I bring this up just a little dinner that a guy picked up the check. It wasn't it. He mingled with the 14 people, shaking hands and became our friend. And then later, in 1989, Faye's probably his best friend, Bart Giamatti, died. A heart attack on Labor Day weekend. And it was terrible. But Faye then became the commissioner, and like Bart was a friend of the umpires. I don't think I ever went to Shea Stadium. For sure, one time he came in the dressing room every time we came to Shea Stadium. Bart was terrific, and he'd bring Faye in with him. And then Bart passed on, and Faye became the commissioner, and he was terrific with the umpires. Everybody, we talked about the umpires. The three guys in succession, Peter Ubroff, Bart Giamatti, and then Faye Vincent, these guys were guys that liked umpires. And mostly Faye and Bart had picked up on it. And it was humbling to go to a stadium and see Faye come in and have that kind of a desire to be and hang around the dressing room and make a big deal out of the umpires. We had so many good times. And in 1992, I had a heart problem in early May, late April, and I was put in the hospital. It was serious enough that the doctor at Lenox Hill Hospital in New York said to call your family that they should come in, which scared the hell out of me. So I called my wife. She came with the kids, and Faye took over. Here's a guy that I just met in '89. Yes, he was a friend, but now I had a problem. He was at my bedside that afternoon, and he said to me, whatever you need, I've got it taken care of. He gave my wife and boys transportation to and from the hospital. He put them at a hotel across the street, 3 blocks away from Lenox Hill. Beautiful hotel. And you know what? When you think of what a friend is, there's a guy who took care of my family while I was laying there and didn't know what was going to go on. I had 95% blockage in the front aorta. They took care of that. I was back to work within 10 days. And my family has never forgotten what Faye Vincent did for us and what he's done for other umpires. And when it was mentioned early today that, you know, he was born in this area, I don't care if he was born in China. Faye's a Hall of Famer, to and through. If you knew what the money that he has put out to different charities, it's just staggering. And I know it because I was involved in several cases where I asked Faye if he could help, and without blinking, he helped. And not a $10 donation either. So I just want to pay tribute to Faye. I love Faye Vincent. I came here because of that. I didn't know I'd have such a nice group in front of me. They told me 3 or 4 people may show up, and you know, we got 100 people here tonight, better than 100. And then the sheriff in town sent, I got to make sure I get his name right because you wouldn't believe it. He picked me up at the airport, Detective Shea, and he's in the back hiding. I'd hide too. He got lost in the airport. The airport police wanted to give him a ticket because he made an illegal turn, and we were an hour late getting here. That's the kind of service I got coming here today. I'm just kidding. I'll tell you what, he's a terrific guy, and I'd add a stripe to your sleeve if it was me for what you did today. In closing, I would like to say that a lot of funny things happen in baseball and in umpiring. In umpiring, you're like a policeman, and it's not an easy deal because you don't have people to go to. They don't have today a Fay Vincent to go to. The closest thing they got to Fay Vincent to go to is Joe Torre because he played the game and he knows the game. The other guys in that office at 245 Park wouldn't know a hockey puck from a baseball unless you told them. and that's a sad thing. But in this case, when I was leaving baseball, when Johnny Bench was leaving baseball, the kids asked me to get him balls signed by Johnny Bench because it was the last time I was going to see him. And so I went into Cincinnati and I asked the clubhouse guy, our clubhouse guy, umpires all have a clubhouse guy. I said, would you take these 4 baseballs over to the club and have Johnny sign them for me? He said, Bruce, he won't sign them when he's home. I said, tell him they're for me, he'll sign them. So he takes them over, he comes back 20 minutes later. The balls are blank, he wouldn't sign the balls. I said, that's all right, I'm working the plate tonight. In Cincinnati. And I'll straighten it out. So they introduced the players and Bench comes out and he says hello to me and I said hello. And the Braves were there and 1, 2, 3, the Braves were out. And Bench was the 3rd hitter in the last of the 1st inning. And he came up to bat, he swung at a pitch, fouled it off. Next pitch, right down the middle, strike 2, at least it was for me, right down the middle. And then the next pitch was just in a gray area. You understand? It was just, could have been a strike or a ball, right? Strike 3. Bench said, that ball's outside. I said, sign the balls. The next day I had a dozen in my locker. I bring up this name because I don't know when you'll have an umpire up here again, but I want to bring up this guy's name. He was another good friend of mine, Jack Buck. For those older people here today, certainly remember Jack. Jack was the best on the street. He'd take me to dinner, we'd go to golf, and I became a good friend of his. And now I see his son, Joe Buck, just last 2 weeks ago with the quarterback from Dallas, Aikman. They were at a Green Bay game and had my son and I in the booth. And he used to take me golfing, and we were at Algonquin in St. Louis. And on the 3rd hole, Buck was, you never knew what he was going to do. I hit a good drive. I was a lot younger, and I could hit the ball good. It was a par 5, and there were 4 guys on the green when we got to our ball. And Jack Buck said, and what are you waiting for? And I said, I can't hit. You can hit. You can't hit it that far. So I hit. Of course, when you can't hit it that far, you do. I hit it in front of the green, and it goes through the 4 guys. Well, Jack belongs to the golf club. And so he wasn't that concerned. So I said, I told you, Jack. He said, well, let's go up and say we're sorry. So we left our 2 partners back here. We get in the cart, we drive up to the green. And Jack said, not to throw me under the bus too much, he said, we're sorry, fellas, but I told the umpire not to hit, but you can't tell him nothing. He sold me right out, and they all had a big laugh. But I just want to tell you this was worth coming for today with these 2 gentlemen. They're going to be inducted to be in the mayor's office. Either you got to get it redecorated or whatever. I mean, I thought it was in a closet, and they said, this is the mayor's office, use this phone. I thought I was at the filling station. But anyway, thanks for coming and being this is a great thing, and I hope it grows and grows. And if I can ever help you again with guests or whatever, ask Bobby Bragan, or Bobby Brown, Bobby Bragan, and ask Bobby Brown, and he'll bring me back. I thank you very much, and good luck to everybody.
Thank you, Bruce. It's always great when you can have a friend like Faye, and the cooperation that both you guys and the admiration that you have for each of you have for each other is very special, and I'm very happy that you were able to come. Thanks again.
Can I just tell the audience one thing? You've always wondered when you went to a ball game, what were the words that a player could use that will get the player instantly thrown out of the game? So one day I said to Bruce, I've wondered for years, Bruce, what are the magic words? What are the words that I could say that you will throw me out of the game immediately for saying? And here's the answer, and you will never forget this answer. And I want you to think of Bruce Remedy every time the answer comes up. He said, Faye, anything that has you in front of it. I'll leave that with you.
We are at the point where we're ready to induct our two inductees for this particular year. The first person that we're going to induct is Norm Feidelson. Many people in this room have known Norm, have worked with him, have been coaching when he was refereeing. His involvement in camps, his involvement in the retarded citizens group here in Waterbury, his involvement as a coach, his involvement as an administrator is a testimony to what he's done. I don't know if Norm wants anybody to know this, but he's going to be 93 years old. We have a group of guys here in Waterbury. We have coffee every morning. And one day one of the guys said, who the hell is that running down the street? We looked up, and it's Norm Feidelson. He runs, he parks his car on Bank Street, and he runs down to Center Street. He's amazing. He was playing racquetball up until a couple of years ago. He went out, and he's been going to Florida in the winter, and pickleball, if any of you go to Florida, is a big thing down in Florida. He went out, he got a racket. He's 92 years old. He went out and got a racket, he started playing pickleball. You want to ask him anything about Waterbury? He could tell you. People say, oh, geez, Norm's 92, how's his mind? How's his mind? Christ, he knows more, and he knows everything. He hasn't forgotten a thing. Well, I want to start this induction of Norm by telling you I haven't forgotten one thing either about Norm Feidelson. I was in the 8th grade at Sprague School, and Norm was teaching and coaching at Barnard. We were playing for the city championship on a Saturday morning at our home field, Waterville Park. We had a 6-1 lead in the last inning. I was catching that game. This guy, I never liked him. I just didn't, he chirped and chirped and chirped. Every pitch. Bruce, it's a good thing you weren't behind the dish because he was driving me crazy. Make a long story short, they beat us 7-6. Wally Cole, who's in the audience, pitched against us that day. We couldn't hit him. Wally Cole and Sammy Leising, Sammy's gone. They had the two biggest curveballs you ever saw if you're a baseball. We used to say it's coming in like a grapefruit, but you couldn't hit it. And this guy on the sidelines, he used to have, we always tried to pick up his signals, okay? So he had a woman faculty member sitting at the end of the bench. And you know, you usually see guys doing different signals. Well, when the lady crossed her legs like this, that was the bunt sign. Nobody ever picked it up, but that's what he did. And so it went along. They won that game that day. It was the most disappointing day, one of the most disappointing days in my whole life, because he had a bet a case of beer or something with the coach, with Rocco Donato, who was coaching our team, and after it was over, you know him, you can just imagine how poor Rocco felt when he started giving him the business. Well, from that point forward, Norm, I saw him, I used to see him around, but I never had really that much to do. He was at Barnard School, and I never got involved anymore. But then I became a coach at Crosby. I'm coaching basketball, and all of a sudden, I see Norm, I get my list of officials, and I see Norm on the game. Now, did you bring it tonight? Did you bring it tonight?
What's that?
What do you always have?
Well, that's it. Don't kill my speech.
But what he's going to tell you he loved to blow that whistle. And Norm and I became quick friends. It's like Johnny Bench became friends with Bruce, because he was a hell of a referee, and he always had the big game at the high school level. Later on, he went to the collegiate level, and you'd be watching a game, somebody's playing down in the Garden, Villanova would be playing St. John's, and who'd be on the game? Norm. When UConn, he was always doing their game. So he really became a very, very prominent basketball official, and that's what really I knew him best as, was a basketball official. But Norm has had many, many life experiences. His service to his country was something, during World War II, Norm was overseas. He was involved in some of the battles over in Europe. He was involved in Czechoslovakia and helping people out of those camps that were over there. He really, really had a lot to do over there with that. He came back. He went to, one of the things I wanted to mention to you, and if you read it in the programs, Norm had told me some time ago that he said when he had come home on leave just before the end of the Second World War, and he was in the Palace Theater, and he said to me the lights started dimming in the palace, and he didn't know what was going on. And finally somebody came in and said, the war is over. The Japanese had surrendered and the war was over. And Norm said to me, you know, the first thing I thought of was, I'm not going to die. And we can just imagine about that greatest generation, when they talk about that greatest generation, and you hear somebody say something like that. He served his country, he served it proudly, and he served it well. When he got out of the service, he went to Central, he went to University of Hartford, got his degree in education. All the guys went in the GI Bill. And then there was an influx of teachers into the school system. Mario Charlo, who's sitting here, Ned Mencio, who's sitting here. And I know I'm going to forget some other people, but these guys all came into the school system around the same time, and it was great having them in the school system. Norm is a legend in the Brooklyn section of Waterbury for what he did over in Barnard School. He finally decided to retire. He's been retired for quite a few years. He retired in 1983. He has enjoyed his life. His first wife passed away in I guess, 1998. He remarried a couple of years later to a very, very good friend of mine. And I'll never forget the day Norm told me that he was going to get married to Lois Dwyer, who I had taught with at Crosby High School, and I really liked her a lot. Lois was a very good friend of mine. The other thing that I wanted to mention about Norm was he has always been helpful to people. His camp work, his work with the ARC group out at Anderson School, he's just been a wonderful guy. When I told him that he was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, Norm had been nominated one time before, I would say sometime in the 90s, early 90s, and he didn't make that threshold. He didn't make it, but he made it. He was nominated this year, and he was a worthy, and we're very happy to have him in the Hall of Fame. So with that, I would like Norm to come up and say a few words. Now, one thing about Norm, I just want to tell you, you all know when I say a few words, he asked me half a dozen times, how much time do I have? And I would say to him, well, 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. And he'd say, okay, now he comes in tonight and he says, Bobby, he says, my speech is going to be real short. I said, oh, Norm. But anyway, let's see. Here's Norm Feidelson.
Thank you and good night. Can you hear me all right? Bruce, when I was 85 and living in Russ's apartment in Heritage Village, the referees from New Haven wanted to surprise me on my birthday. It was a knock on the door. There's a woman out there, scantily clad. And I said, what are you doing here? Are you Norm Feidelson? I said, yes, I am. Well, the New Haven officials, where I was president of the local and the board, said, well, why did they send you over? Well, I'm going to give you super sex. I said, I'll have the soup. Folks, don't worry about all these notes. These are bills that my daughters have to pay tomorrow. 74 years ago, at 18 years old, I was in these aldermanic chambers on June 23rd, 1943, to march off to war and to the Induction Center at Fort Devens, Mass, to join the U.S. Army. Walking to the railroad station at 7:30 a.m. in the heat of the morning on beautiful Grants in my native city, amidst people cheering, crying, and waving small flags to see us off and say goodbye. It was an amazing thing. And they told us we could bring $20 along. And I wore a jacket and a tie, and I don't know why. In Thomaston, I lost $20 in a crap game. I said, is this the way World War II is going to be? And the draft age was changed in those days from 1942 to 18 to 37. And 19 months together, and she isn't here tonight, is she, Mayor? Mickey Albino Dorso. No. I had a surprise for her. So let me just start this off with a little song. What a day this has been. What a rare mood I'm in. Falling in love with Waterbury again and again. And that comes from Frederick Lowe, the composer, lyricist Alan and Jay Lerner, and sung by Nat King Cole, which I don't think so. Honorable Neil M. O'Leary. mayor of this town, who rose through the ranks of the police department, became the chief, served as mayor since 2011, and bet your bottom dollar that's going to continue. I want to give you kudos for taking the lead with the greater Waterbury communities to eradicate the deadly opioid epidemic that is killing so many of our young people. And also, Neil, maybe you got a job for me after this is over. Also leading the initiative for the Freight Street renewal. Thanks for renewing the Hank O'Donnell Hall of Fame. And to my friend over here on my left, the Honorable Fay Vincent, a man of courage, grit, honesty, and determination. It is my honor and privilege for me to share this evening with you. Now, if the NCAA administrators are smart, they would choose you as a head man to straighten out this latest mess and scandal involving criminal charges against horrific allocations in Division I baseball. Are you ready for that position? We need it. The point shaving that took place pales to comparison in 1948 to 1952. And I'm waiting to say to the indefatigable Bobby Brown, where are you hiding, Bobby? Did he disappear? Okay. Chair of the Hank O'Donnell Committee. If you want to become mayor of Waterbury, you bring Bobby aboard to be your campaign manager. He is a tireless worker that gives his all in any endeavor he takes on. As a dedicated teacher, coach, and chair of the business education department, he forgot to mention that my sister Lee, who was 98, was your mentor. So we've had a long time together. He has been a leader with his sidekick, Jack Crone, insisting all of us, the Waterbury retirees, with questions and problems, dealing with teachers' insurance and medical questions. He's been my loyal friend, even though you stole my beautiful blue sweater and returned it a year later, and it's about time I got it. And that 67 years ago that happened in Sprague, you didn't tell him the whole story. I told the guys, nobody swings at the ball. That's how we won at 7-6. Now to use a grammatically incorrect expression, the reason I was brung here was my career as a basketball, high school, and college official in the day of two-man crews. In the year 1941, on the start of my senior year at the best academic college preparatory high school in Connecticut, good old Crosby, and we were known as Old Ivy, not the Bulldogs. My beloved coach, Bill Schofield, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1990 here, and listen to this, UConn graduates, he was a three-sport captain at the University of Connecticut and lettered in the fourth sport. He was also a high school referee on the Litchfield Board of Approved Basketball Officials. Game fees were notoriously low, and he couldn't ref in the Valley League that Crosby was a member. He said to me, "You're too small to play basketball, Norm. You will be a good official." During our practices, he would choose me to ref scrimmages between the freshman and JV squads. One week, he would pick me up at 343 Willow Street, and Michael Gilmore, thank God that house was raised, thank you, when he was officiating. That was my first introduction to basketball officiating. In 1942, our Crosby team, led by loving teammates, by co-captains Artie Pace Fisher and Albie Kelly, Buddy Bellinger, Bobby Reynolds, and I, lost to Naugatuck by 3 points in the old New Haven Arena when we were ranked 15th and Naugatuck was ranked 16th in Class L. We then met East Pawtucket High from Rhode Island, Johnny, and who later played for URI, and then we held them to 36 points that game. And we lost it again to Naugatuck by 3 points. When they played the game, that was the New England tournament that couldn't be played in Boston because of the blackouts. Then Artie Fisher and I were awarded a trustee academic scholarship to UConn at Storrs worth $50. Our room and board was $212.50 for 21 meals. Bill was president of the Alumni Association. Artie plays as a starter on the varsity, and I started on the freshman team and began refereeing intramural games. In June of 43, Artie went into the service. He became a navigator in the Air Force, and I went into anti-aircraft and then the infantry. And Bobby mentions that day when I kissed Harry Truman's picture every night of my life because he's one of the reasons I'm here. Now, back to school, transferred, I won't tell you the real story, to TCC, now CCSU, to become the first male teacher at Barnard School on December 16th, 1950, and the first male principal there in 66. Those of you that remember our affable Irishman who wore a bow tie, Dr. John G. Gilmartin. Guess what I wore to the interview? I wore a double-breasted suit with the bow tie. We both lived in the same neighborhood. Norman, he says, we're going to start you off at the salary, $2,400. And I started to smile. And he said, for every 10 months in the service, you got another 100. I am now up to 2,700. And he says, you were a pretty good basketball player at Crosby. And he said, you're going to coach 6th grade basketball and baseball. And you're also going to coach 7th and 8th grade baseball and basketball. And I said, doctor, is there a stipend for that? He says, that's $50. So my mathematical, I said, that's another 300. No, that's 50 total, and you have to use your own car and pay for your own gas. I said, where do I sign? Now, the people that helped me in my career in high school, Hank O'Donnell, my father, God rest his soul, Louis Fidelson, did all the O'Donnell's work. So you really paid it off, Hank, right now. P.J. Conway, who I miss here today, Joe Fontana, Tom Monahan. And in the college ranks, it was Don Perno, the Wilbur Cross star, who starred at UConn, who was the coach. He preceded the great Jim Calhoun, and he pushed me when he became the great coach at UConn and left. And you know what he's doing now? He's still with George Washington University on the staff. And Bob Zaffalato, we all know Bob, graduated Torrington High. He was a star at CCSU. He's a Hall of Famer honoree as a basketball star, and he's still on the staff, and he coached BC. Those guys pushed me. Now a Toronto Raptor scout where he held many positions. Lastly, Bill Dietrich, coach of CCSU, and who was my best man when I married Lois Dwyer in Tequesta, Florida in 2000. Lastly, Bill Dietrich. He was coming to see my sister and me because we're still living in that wonderful place called the Towers, where it's just a wonderful community. And how about this for odds? There are 224 women and 111 men. Not bad. And I must tell this story quickly because the women are waiting so anxiously for the UConn Husky women to play. They don't know the men play. They knock at my door, what's the schedule, what time? Do you think they'll lose any games this year? They all went in Yiddish, we say they sat shiva because they lost that game to Mississippi State on that crazy shot. And they loved the game. And I tell them, the men play. We don't want to watch the men. They don't realize that the ball is a little smaller. And lastly, at Bill again, and how I miss him. And my wonderful wife, Gloria, all she wanted from me, and as we started to raise the kids when I was refereeing, bring me home a hot fudge sundae, and they remained in the freezer for many, many times. So we're getting close to Norman when he's going to end, and I just got to go. We're going to have a little fun. Now, back to school, transferring, my officiating career came and everything, and the craziest guy that I ever worked for in my life was Fred Barracat. And Fred Barracat was a coach at Fairfield University. And Fred Barracat became the commissioner of officials in the ACC. And he was a whack job. He would burst into the rock. And the last game I worked was in 1975, St. Bonaventure in Fairfield. I was bar mitzvahed in my faith with my 3 daughters. They were kids at the wall in Israel, and walking through the shuk in in Jerusalem, I see a sign, F. Barakat Rug Merchant. In my little camera, I took a half dozen pictures, had it developed and let it go. That game that he lost, I was working with a guy who was a vice principal in Mount Vernon, New York. He said, we're gonna hear from Fred Barakat. Knock at the door, which is against all the rules in college officiating. I said, come in, Fred. He comes in. I made you what you are today. You work in the garden. You work the Yankee conference. You work here. I said, Freddie, you're in the wrong occupation. And I pulled out the picture and I said, you should have stayed a rug merchant. He burst out and laughed, and I gave him the pictures as a present. That was my thing. I could tell you a million stories about what happened. So now, I'm going to kind of, because I'm getting the word, but we're going to end it this way. And Joe, where are you? Palladino. When you interview me, we'll do it all the old things, but make sure it's a long one. Anyhow, I want to show you something. For all you want to be referees, this is the size of the book that you have to learn. Look at it. So when you're second guessing us, be careful, all right? The second thing is, Marion, would you get that blue handkerchief for me, please? She was the one when they used to draw straws to see who was going to go with me. I had the same size straw. Dad, how come we don't go to second time? Yeah, there it is. That's the one I want. Okay. So all you needed, and I used to tell my guys, what's the toughest call to make in basketball? I said, the out of bounds. Well, how do you handle it? Well, sometimes you call blue, and the next time you call white. Everybody's happy. Nobody's bad. So I've got to give you this. Here it is. Russ, this is for you. I'm going to travel in a minute, and I was the official known. If there was a bad foul out there, and did I get in trouble with the commissioner, I'd throw the blue flag, call it clipping, put the ball under my arm, and go 10 yards. Folks, this is indeed one of the greatest nights of my life. To be honored here, I didn't know I flunked the first time. I don't know if you can see this. It's what Rolly, and he just passed away, my good friend from Villanova. Norm J. Feidelson, the best referee money could buy. Isn't that a one? Holy two.
Norm, get your three girls and go over there.
Mary, Ellen, Barbara.
I want to introduce three people, Norm's daughters, Marion, Ellen, and Barbara. They're going to help him unveil his plaque. And I also want to mention, as Norm started to talk to you, I want to mention Norm's 98-year-old sister, Lee Feidelson, who Lee broke me into teaching at Crosby and was a mentor of mine, and she's still around, and I love her. We're going to unveil the plaque now for Norm. As I said, this plaque is made for, this plaque will be set up in Municipal Stadium, and I can tell you right now, Mayor O'Leary is working on a permanent building to house these plaques, which will probably be somewhere in the stadium, but it will be the actual Hank O'Donnell Hall of Fame building. So when he says he's going to do something, Our final inductee is Faye Vincent Jr. Bruce is going to say just a couple more words and we'll unveil Faye's plaque. But I want to just point out an observation to you. When I called Faye and I told him that he was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame here in Waterbury, he said to me, I'm a little bit surprised. My father was very popular and very well known in Waterbury. He said, I lived in Waterbury for 5 years when I was born, but we eventually moved down to New Haven, but my dad was always involved with officiating, and he told me something that I never knew. My father used to talk a lot, him and his buddies, they would be talking about the old city amateur league, and they would, times they say, who's the best player in the city amateur league? And this Faye Vincent, his name used to come up, and I had no idea, honestly, who he was or anything else. I remember Jimmy Lee at Crosby, who I took over for as basketball coach. He did talk to me a lot about different old-timers and people who he had been associated with. And that Faye Vincent's name came up also with Jimmy Lee. But Faye said to me, if anybody should be in the Hall of Fame, it should be my dad. And he proceeded to tell me that there was one year, and if you're a baseball fan, you'll understand this. It was one year that his father hit in the high fours or just over 500 for a season. Now that is one hell of a baseball player to have that kind of a batting average. Faye went on, if you've got your program, he went on, he did a lot of wonderful in his life. His education led him to Williams College, to Yale University for his law degree, to Columbia Pictures where he was an executive with Coca-Cola, law firms in New York and Washington, D.C., and ultimately his job as commissioner of Major League Baseball. In all of that, he has not forgotten Waterbury. Mayor O'Leary, as he mentioned to you in his talk, Faye Vincent has been very good to Waterbury. He's been very good to youth programs in Waterbury. It goes unnoticed, but he is well deserving to be in the Hall of Fame. And for just a few more brief words, I'm going to ask Bruce Fremming to induct Faye, to just say a couple of words, and then Faye, if you'd like, we're going to give you the microphone, and then we'll unveil the plaque.
So much for the Fidelson show. We had 2 commercials we could have. I have a question to ask, and then I'm going to get into Faye here. How many are here for the first time? Raise your hands. How many have never been here before? Raise your hands. They do it every time. I mean, that's perfect. I thought the crowd was smarter, but they're not. I just want to say, after that terrific speech by our man here, and his whistle didn't work. Did you notice that? I'll be short with this to say this. Faye has always been a Hall of Fame guy for me as a person. And I think that's the highest respect you can pay to anybody. That he's a quality guy who helps so many people and never flaunts it, never takes credit for it or anything. He just does it. And that's a Hall of Fame man. And I love Faye Vincent. Norm, I could get to like you a little bit, but you can't talk anymore. That's a record tonight. I mean, that was a record. And but anyway, and Mr. Mayor, thank you for having me. And this is a great little town. And Terry Tata told me a long time ago. This is a great, great area, and I believe them now. This is a great crowd. You could have 5,000 people here, and they couldn't give more enthusiasm than what you've given tonight. And Faye, I wish you well. I'm going to go over there and pull that cloth over and bring it over to you. But Faye Vincent, a true, true Hall of Fame person, and I congratulate you, Faye.
We'll learn this. We'll pull this back a little so everybody can see him.
Now I know what you should never do. You should never follow a Jewish comedian. It's like we asked to sing a few tunes after Luciano Pavarotti. I'm going to tell you three things about Waterbury. One is I'm proud to be from Waterbury, but I'm even prouder to come back to Waterbury. My father and mother married here in the Immaculate Conception Church. I was baptized there. My father was a Yale football and baseball star. He was my hero. My early memories are him at Memorial Stadium out here. At 58 or 58, he always did the Crosby Rugby game every year. And then because of the tight one, he would manage to get down and do the Edsonia Derby game later on Thanksgiving Day. And my mother always said, what about us? What about the family and Thanksgiving turkey? He'd say, have it without me. Not a very bad idea. I spent 5 months after I broke my back in college in Waterbury Hospital. I will never forget the people who were taking care of me, the doctors, Alfonso Del Pietro, Ortiz Zadra, Frank O'Ryan. Great men. I love them all. They got me back walking, and they saved my life. The people in Waterbury, the Waterbury Hospital crowd, made a huge effect on me, and I think every time I come back to Waterbury, as I go by the hospital, I always salute. It was an awful experience, but they made it tolerable. And Hank O'Donnell wrote the first piece ever written about me. He came over to the hospital, had a photographer, he looked in the files, he find it. Here's this 18-year-old kid who's been a football player for years. I broke my back. And he had this portrayal of me, which was, of course, all about my father, because it said, it's too bad young Faye is going to be the football player his father was at Yale. Hank O'Donnell, every time he got bored, would write a column about my father. And of course, people in the community would then say to me, would you tell Hank O'Donnell we have all we need? He writes about Vegas and how we move or something at Yale. And I had a professor when I went to summer school at Fairfield. He lived in the valley, and he said, hey, either tell Hank O'Donnell to stop writing about your own man, or tell him to get a So Waterbury is important because at least I take the value of Waterbury with us. I take the values that my mother and father gave me, the values that made a difference in my life. And they are my values. And the thought that we don't know what truth and beauty and justice are anymore is silly. We know what they are, and they start with parents like my parents. If I don't tell you a baseball story, you're going to go home and say, how didn't want anybody bugging him for autographs, and so it's 7 in the morning, and there's nobody around with Ted. I get off the elevator, and he yelled, "Commissioner, come on over here." He said, "What are you doing up so early?" I said, "Well, I'm going to go to Mass." "What?" He said, "You're going to Mass?" He said, "Come over here and talk baseball." He said, "God can wait." Would you rather talk baseball with me than go to Mass? I said, "You put it that way, then." I said, and he went off as he always did. He talked about baseball because he loved it with such an intensity. And I don't know how he got started, but his theme was pitchers that most people were aware of. He said, "You know what, pitchers, most pitchers are really stupid. A few aren't quite that stupid, but by and large, they're really stupid." And he said, "Here's how you get that." He said, "Now I got to the big leagues, and I can really murder a fastball." He said, "A stupid pitcher comes up to the minors, and he says to himself, I got here because I have a great fastball." Now he said he sees this big, tall kid from the Red Sox batting left-handed, and he said, "I know that. I throw in the fastball. I use it in minors, I use it in American League. I got everybody out with my fastball." Now Willie said, "That kid is stupid." He said, "You can't throw a fastball by me if I have any suspicion it's coming." So he said, "If I get you down in the count, the one thing you cannot do is throw me a fastball, because I'm sitting on that, and I will hit it a long way. And then you'll come up and you'll say, 'Here comes Williams again. I still can get it out. My fastball was a little too far in, it was a little too far up, it was a little too far down.'" He said, "I wish I had that bullshit." He said, "I've heard a fastball that Kid thinks he's going to get me out with a fastball. You can't do it if I think it's coming." At that point, in comes Warren Spahn. Now, I love Warren Spahn. I think Warren Spahn, in fact, was the smartest single baseball player I ever talked to. He was a great figure in World War II. We fought across all of Europe with Mr. Vice. So Spahn comes over. Williams says, "Spahn, I'm over here. Look at the Commissioner. Come on over here." He said, "Jesus Christ," he said, "I'm telling you how stupid pitchers are." And he said, "You ought to come over here," because he said, "You are stupid." He said, "You're a smart guy." He said, "Commissioner Spahn, you were smart as hell." He said, "I would never put him in a car with anybody who was stupid." So Spahn said, "He's going to tell you a story." He said, "I'd rather tell you." And I said, "I want to hear the story." Here it goes. Spahn said, "You know, we played in Boston. We never played against each other because I was in the National League of America. We were big in those days, and we were well known, but we didn't know each other." So he said, at 55, he said, "I don't know the years," that we both get in the All-Star game. And he said, "I started late in the game, and I never pitched him. I never seen him." He said, "Here he comes up, late in the game." He said, "I'm in." And he said, "I figured, Jesus, this is the great Williams." He hit 406 and 481, and he went over there. Let's see what we can do. So he said, "I don't know what happened." The Commissioner said, "I got a couple of strikes on him, a couple of balls." And then he said, "It's 3-2. And he said, he was a murderous fastball here. And he said, "I threw a fastball, but it was hot." He said, "It was a ball." He said, "Williams never swung at a bad pitch." He said, "Some of the pitch he swung at my fastball, and he missed it." And he said, "You know, he can't hit the fastball up and down. Now, it's not a strike, but it's a hell of a pitch." So he said, "I don't think anything more about it, but I didn't forget." Now he said, next spring, we were playing together down in Florida, and he said, "Williams comes bouncing down the ball. He's slapping his arm, he's yelling at me. I'm out of the left field, I'm running legs across the field. Spahn, Jesus Christ." He said, "I got to talk to Spahn. Come over here." He said, "I got something to tell you." He said, "Remember last summer?" He said, "Jesus," he said, "you struck me out with that fastball open in." He said, "It's funny. You get 2 strikes on a big left-handed hitter like me. You throw me that fastball up a lot. It looks like a balloon coming in." He said, "It's so big. It's up in your eyes." He said, "You got to swing it." And he said, "It's a great pitch." And he said, "I yelled at Spahn. I That's what you have to pitch with two strikes on a big left-handed hitter. Throw that fastball up in it. So Bonnie said, I love Commissioner. Something like that for years, you never forget if you're a pitcher. So he said it didn't happen that year. He said within a year or two, we're in the All-Star game again. And he said, this time I think we're going to do it. And he said, I got a couple of strikes on him. And I said, I don't know what this day. We're going to find out. Because he's sitting right here. He said, son of a bitch, hey, you got two strikes on this. And Williams is beginning. Yeah, he said, finish the story. It's a great story, Commissioner. He said, listen carefully to how this ends. He said, Commissioner, I said to myself, Williams can't hit that fastball up in it. He said, I threw him a fastball up in it. He said, the son of a bitch hit it 450 feet. And he said, he got to first base. And he said, I yelled at him, bastard, you set me up. He didn't say it. He got to second base. I yelled at him louder. You did it to me. You son of a bitch. You set me up. You bastard. And he said, Williams just nodded his head. And Williams said, I did it, and I do it again. Here's the point. I've always argued that baseball combination of enormous physical talent, but brains make a difference. And these guys, Spawn and Williams, were really smart. So I'll bet you, at some point in the next couple of weeks, you'll tell a story about Spawn and Williams. Now, if you doubt that I'm accurate, I had Spawn tell that story on tape. The tape is at the Hall of Fame, so there's no question. But you can see Spawn if you get the tape for the Hall of Fame with that story. Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Lived in Waterbury on Wall Street, New York, until his family moved to the States. His father, Christine, worked at Shell began very street and was an outstanding player in the city amateur. Christine was also recognized as a top football official at the high school and region level in New England. A junior, graduated with honors from Williams College in 1960. He became a Yale man after receiving his law degree from Yale in 1963. Practiced law in New York and Washington, D.C. until 1978. He was president and CEO